Hey, I want to tell you about an island, a small one. Warm, colorful, full of music and old American cars. It sits in the Caribbean, just 90 miles south of Florida. On a clear day, you can almost see it from Key West. That's closer than Miami to Orlando, closer than New York to Philadelphia. Shockingly, almost insultingly close to America's southeastern coastline. The island is Cuba. For more than 60 years, America has never quite been able to simply look away from it. But here's the question I want to ask you right now. Why? Why does this tiny island still haunt Washington? It's not just ideology, it's not just old Cold War grudges. The answer is about geography and about listening. Think about Florida alone. Cape Canaveral, 3 combatant commands, major submarine bases, NASA. All of it within range of Cuba. From Cuba, someone with the right antenna could watch all of that. That's why the island has never truly been quiet. Now let's go back. Back to 1962, when America looked at Cuba and came face to face with its worst nightmare. It was October 1962. U.S. spy planes had spotted something strange on the island. Long, cylindrical shapes hidden under camouflage netting. Soviet nuclear missiles. Pointed north, toward American cities. Toward you, your family, right across that 90-mile stretch of water. Can you imagine that? Going to bed knowing the nearest nuclear warhead is closer than your nearest major league ballpark? For 13 days in October, the world held its breath. Kennedy ordered a naval blockade. Khrushchev blinked. The missiles left. Crisis over. America exhaled. But here's what most people forget. The island didn't lose its value when the missiles left. Because the missiles were just one chapter. The story of Cuba as a strategic platform, and that was only beginning. When the Soviet missiles left Cuba in 1962, the Soviets didn't leave. They stayed. And they started building something different. Not missiles this time. Antennas, dishes, signal intercepting equipment spread across a large facility near Havana. They called it Lourdes. Lourdes became the Soviet Union's single largest overseas intelligence gathering complex. A bigger SIGINT operation than anything else Moscow had abroad. According to Cuba's own defense minister, Raul Castro, the Lourdes facility reportedly gave the Soviets 75% of their military strategic intelligence. Think about that number. 3 out of every 4 strategic intelligence reports Moscow got came from a single island near Florida. So what exactly is SIGINT? Signals intelligence. It sounds technical, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Let me break it down. Imagine you can't read someone's letters, but you can see the postman's route, how often he comes. When packages suddenly triple in size, you can infer an enormous amount. More deliveries might mean surging activity. Sudden silence might mean something seriously wrong. Patterns matter enormously. That's SIGINT. You intercept radio signals, military communications, satellite feeds. Even when encrypted, the pattern itself still tells a powerful story. The missiles were visible. They exploded. They were the obvious weapon. But the antennas? They were quieter and more patient. Okay, let's take a detour. Because there's one more country that saw Cuba in a very specific way. North Korea. Think about how far apart North Korea and Cuba are. One is in Asia, the other is in the Caribbean. 13,000 kilometers. But ideologically, they've seen themselves as true brothers in arms. And Kim Il-sung had a very specific phrase to describe that bond. He called Cuba the Western Trench of socialism, and called North Korea the Eastern Trench. 2 foxholes in the same war. It's a striking image, right? Picture a global trench map, east versus west, and Cuba was the outpost guarding the western edge. North Korea's official newspaper, Rodong Sinmun, described the 2 nations as comrades firmly united in their shared struggle against imperialism and the West. But here's the thing. This wasn't just words. Cuba and North Korea built real diplomatic, military, and intelligence sharing ties. For America, this showed something important. Cuba wasn't just a problem with one adversary. It was a node in a network. Now we get to the part of the story that brings us to today. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Lourdes shut down in 2002. The campus converted into a university. Russia left. The Cold War was supposedly over. Cuba was supposed to be irrelevant now. But someone else noticed the vacancy. And that someone else had a very long list of reasons to care about Cuba's location. In 1999, a high-level Chinese military delegation visited Cuba. and reportedly inked agreements granting China access to several electronic eavesdropping facilities on the island. The rumors simmered for 2 decades. Then in 2023, Biden administration officials confirmed it. China had spy facilities in Cuba, so CSIS, a major Washington think tank, started analyzing satellite imagery. And what they found was genuinely remarkable. 4 sites across Cuba showed satellite dishes, circular antenna arrays, guarded perimeters, and underground facilities. Clear signs of active intelligence collection operations. The first and biggest site, Bejucal, in the hills near Havana. This place has been under suspicion since the late 1990s. By 2025, new satellite imagery showed a major new circular antenna array under construction at Bejucal, 175 meters in diameter. Then there's El Salao, on the opposite side of Cuba, near Santiago, just 40 miles from a place you definitely know, Guantanamo. A new CDAA, circularly disposed antenna array, Guillemot, started construction there in 2021. Never publicly reported until CSIS found it. China and Cuba both deny everything. Of course they do. But here's the thing. Denial is also the default in intelligence work. Okay, so we've got antenna farms. Big deal, right? Why does this matter so much? Let me put it this way. A missile tells you war has already started. An antenna might tell you war is coming before a single shot is fired. Think about what a CDAA can do. With a diameter of 175 meters, it can track signals from 3,000 to 8,000 nautical miles away. That range covers the entire continental United States, the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic seaboard, the Caribbean, all of it. Now, let's be clear. Most modern military communications are encrypted. You can't just listen in and hear someone's orders, but encryption doesn't hide everything. You can still see who's talking, when, how often, and when they suddenly go silent. Suddenly, a normally quiet base starts broadcasting constantly. Submarine traffic near a Florida port doubles in 72 hours. That's intelligence. There's the space angle, too. Bejucal has dish antennas pointed directly at geosynchronous orbit, aimed at U.S. satellites passing over the Caribbean. Cape Canaveral launches rockets south. SpaceX splashdown zones sit off Cuba's coast. Bejucal has a perfect view of every launch. For China, which is racing to match SpaceX's reusable rocket technology, watching every U.S. launch from 90 miles away is priceless. This isn't sci-fi, this is the new Cold War. Not mushroom clouds, not missiles, just antennas. Quietly watching, patiently learning. So what exactly does Washington do about all this? Well, lately it's been turning the screws, and doing so very, very hard. In January 2026, Trump signed an executive order declaring Cuba's actions an unusual and extraordinary threat to U.S. national security. The order created a tariff mechanism. Any country that sells oil to Cuba could face additional U.S. import duties. Period. The effect was immediate. Venezuela's oil supply to Cuba, already cut after Maduro was seized in January, completely stopped. Mexico stopped. Other suppliers stopped. By May 2026, Cuba's energy minister admitted the island had 0 diesel and 0 fuel oil, 22-hour blackouts, hospitals canceling scheduled surgeries, schools shutting down entirely, residents banging pots and pans in the dark streets of Havana. Then in May 2026, Trump signed another executive order, EO 14404. This one expanded sanctions to foreign companies dealing with Cuba. GASA, Cuba's military-controlled business empire, got designated. That's hotels, finance, retail, imports, the economic spine of the island. Then 2 of the world's biggest shipping giants, Hapag-Lloyd and CMA CGM, suspended all Cuban cargo bookings overnight due to compliance concerns. 2 companies potentially controlling 60% of Cuba's shipping volume. Gone overnight. Just like that. Because of U.S. executive order compliance risk, Washington's message was unmistakably clear. Cuba now faced a coordinated 3-front pressure campaign. First, energy. Second, financial sanctions. Third, military signals and threats. Okay, now I want to stop and ask you something. Because this story, it's not one-sided. There are 2 very different views here. The American argument goes like this. We're not punishing Cuba out of spite. We're stopping China from planting a spy platform in our backyard. Russia had missiles and antennas here once. China may be doing it again. This isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. And the intelligence threat is real. CSIS found actual construction, actual satellite dishes, actual antenna arrays. This isn't made up, but there's the other argument. And it's also worth hearing. Because cutting off a country's oil supply hurts real people. Legal scholars at Just Security argued the U.S. oil denial campaign may violate the customary international law prohibition on coercive intervention in other states. And critics argue the damage doesn't land on Cuba's generals. It lands on nurses, teachers, kids who can't get milk at the store. The UN General Assembly voted 165-7 condemning the embargo. Most of the world thinks something is seriously wrong here. The question that haunts this whole story is this: when does defense become coercion? When do security concerns become collective punishment? There's no clean answer. And honestly, that might be the most important lesson to take away from everything we've discussed today. So let's bring it all together now. What are we really looking at when we look at Cuba in 2026? What's the big picture? In 1962, the world watched Cuba because of missiles, visible, explosive, undeniable. The most direct and terrifying kind of threat imaginable to Americans? In the Cold War, the world watched Cuba because of antennas. Silent, patient, feeding intelligence to Moscow around the clock. To North Korea, Cuba was the western trench of the anti-American world, a symbol that the fight could be waged everywhere. And today, Cuba may be the closest point from which China can watch U.S. military bases, rocket launches, submarine movements. The weapons changed, the technology changed, the players changed. But Cuba's role on the map, that has stayed remarkably consistent. Cuba is the island that listens. Or rather, the island from which others have always found a way to listen on America's behalf. Maybe the Cold War never ended. Maybe it just changed its equipment. From ICBMs to CDAAs, from warheads to wavelengths. And the side that listens first, learns first, anticipates first. In great power competition, that may be the side that moves first. Now I want to ask you, after hearing all of this, what do you think? Is this about security or something deeper than that? A tiny island 90 miles from Florida still sits at the center of the biggest rivalry on the planet. Make of that what you will. That's a wrap for today. The missiles came and went, the antennas stayed, and somewhere out there, someone is still listening.